Miss Kay's doing okay. I seen her Saturday, I think it was, before church Sunday. I think that's when it was. No, it was the Tuesday evening. Sunday I was going to go down there, and Robert was having some serious problems, and I sat with him till late in the night, so I didn't get to go down there. But I got rained out Tuesday, so then I went down and saw Miss Kay, and very talkative, not like Miss Kay. I think they had her on some good juice or something. Oh, I'm not supposed to say that probably. But she was kind of fun. And then towards the end of it, she got kind of emotional, and she said, we've got quite a church family there, and I'm proud of them. And she said, and you should be too. I said, I am. Sure am. I don't know if she thinks I preach too hard at you or what. I don't know. No. She had pneumonia, and so they're trying to get her lungs back to as good as they can get them. They thought she had a heart issue, and they took her in. You all probably knew that she was worried about something they were going to do. It was just an angioplasty. She didn't understand. She can't hear, for one thing. The whole time I was there, I was right down in her ear talking to her. And so if she thinks they say something, she gets worried and stuff. But it was they just looked into her heart and said it's perfect. There was nothing wrong with it. So they ruled that out as a problem. And so if nothing else happens, she'll be home this week. They just needed to give her some more IV antibiotics because of the pneumonia and just see how she progressed. Okay. Where am I going to start? Turn with me to Genesis 50. Genesis 50. I'm kind of along the same lines as what I've been on. We've finished Revelation, and I've kind of just been freelancing a little bit, which I'll get back to the expository teaching soon. I just been learning some things about ministry, for one, and having different things that I've been dealing with lately, different counseling sessions and stuff, whether it's marriage counseling or just emotional counseling. And so that's what's been on my mind so much. And last week we talked about, we went to Psalm 22, and we saw how Christ and David and Israel, they were always going through something. Christ had a very short ministry in this world, and he was always suffering rejection or emotional stresses, And of course, we know he took it very well. He was God in the flesh, but he still had them. He even wept when his loved one died. Even though he knew he was going to raise him in 4 days, in 4 days, he still wept about it. And I was hoping that would help all those that struggle. There's so many struggles that's going on, and we get to thinking that we are struggling because God's mad at us or something. And that's not it at all. It could be, if you're really putting your fist in God's face and saying, I'm going to live my way and not yours, then I could see maybe getting spanked a little bit. We do that a lot. But we've seen how David was said it was good for him to be afflicted. And Christ said that he went to the cross because of the joy that was set before him. He knew what all that suffering was going to produce at the end of it. And so David and the believing Israel through the centuries, through the years, they took their suffering well and used it to glorify God in the midst of that. And I'm going to be along that same lines today because I don't know, it seems like I could preach a message and I can fire it out there and 20 people will say, "Oh, that helped me." There'll be 20 others that act like I never even preached it. They still have the same issues. It's like they never heard a word, and it's not because they're not listening. It's not that at all. And so if it seems like I'm repeating myself, just be patient, and I'll bet you the Lord will speak to you about something. But I've studied the English language quite a bit since I've become a serious Bible believer. You got to know your own language if you're going to understand the Bible. And I love the English language. Man, it blows anything else out of the water because it's a bunch of languages that come together. And it's like it takes some from this one, some from that one, some from that one, some from that one. And it's got so much understanding in it if we'll just learn it, just the words themselves. And I've gotten more clarity and comprehension of many biblical passages that used to I never could quite get. But I've gotten more clarity and the ability to understand something by studying my own language. And it's than I ever got from Greek and Hebrew. Not that you can't learn some things from them, you can. But they're kind of incomplete. They were languages back in that day. We haven't had anybody speak those languages for centuries. The Hebrew language is being revived all the time in Jerusalem. They're trying to revive it, but there's literally nobody today that can express it like they did back then. It's just a fact. No Bible scholar would tell you any different. But in the English, man, these words, it's almost like God knew we would be a little bit less smart in the last days. And He would give us a language that spelled things out for us. And I think that's what He did. Not saying that Hebrew and Greek don't have any value, they do. But I believe it had a lot more value in its day than it does today, because the English is an international language. It's spoken everywhere. Everywhere. We've sent King James Bibles to India, to Africa, Kenya, because they teach their kids how to speak English with the Bible. And you can go to Kenya, and there is native Kenyans there that speak better English than any of us, because they learned it from a pure source. But I want to talk about the word message tonight. So I want to bring a message about the word message. Does that make sense? Message means to send out from my position in life. To send out from my position in life. The word mess. I walk in the house and my kids have been playing in the living room, and I'll say every time, "Look at this mess." And Ava's got to where she says it before I even get it out of my mouth, because she knows that's what I'm going to say. I'll walk into her room and I say, "Look at this mess." When I walk into her room now, she says, "Look at this mess." And I said, "Yeah, you ought to help your mama clean it up." Mess means sent out. It means hurled out. It means thrown out. And age, message, means a period or experience of life. It doesn't just mean your number, because you can have a lower number and people will say you're more aged than people your age. Most people your age. You're more aged than, you know what I mean. It doesn't have as much to do with the number that you are. It has to do with the position in life that you're in. And so, you ever heard of a sage? Who is it? What is a sage? A wise man. That's right. And there are sages that are 40 years old. Generally, they're older than that because they've been around the block a time or two. They've experienced life. And that's where that comes from. It's someone that's experienced in a certain area. You can have Jewish sages, Christian sages. You can have sage for your sausage. Oh man, we can learn a lot from our language. I'm not kidding you. We can learn a lot from our language. Some of you are probably saying, "Yeah, I like it about as much as I did in school." I didn't like English language. I hated it. And I could not wait to get out of English class. If I could go back, man, I would. It would really help me with the Bible. Punctuation, those things they call gerunds. Anybody know what a gerund is? Wow, nobody does. They tried to teach me that in high school, but I didn't want to hear it. Mr. Hoffman, did anybody have Mr. Hoffman in Eldon school? He tried. The word language, lingo, age, that means the lingo or the vernacular of the age. Language changes as you progress. So it doesn't have as much to do with the time frame as it does experiences and things entering in and changing and altering it. To speak someone's language doesn't just mean you know the same words. To know someone's language is to know where they are coming from. To know where they're coming from. This is something that I have experienced very much recently. A lot in the last few days. Dealing with Robert. Knowing where people come from, you can speak their language. And man, they'll cling to you. They'll cling to you like nothing else. Just like going to another country and you're there with nobody else that speaks your language, but you find one person that speaks a little bit of English and you're just going to stick around them as much as you can. That's what Robert was like. He sees something different in you people and me than he's seen in every other place that he has been. As soon as we left here this morning, he says, "I'm homesick." He didn't even know how to explain it. He just says, I feel like this is my home. Because some of us speak his language. Though we haven't been where he's at. Miss Rose?
Did he grow up in church?
Yep, he grew up in a church. And
I know when we sing,
yeah. he grew up till he was 7 years old in his mom and dad's house. Then he was put into foster care, and there he was molested. And that started a whole chain of events where landed him in prison, and he was raped in prison, and he was in there 2 different times. But, I mean, we could go all over that, and it helps you to understand some of the things why he would want to change his identity. You know, I just tried to keep pumping into him, you can change your identity and still be Robert. You can, because Jesus wants to give you a new identity. And when I left him up there, you know, he was scared. He was worried. He doesn't trust anybody. And he called me after I got down the road a little ways just to thank me. He just was thanking me for not pushing him away and not doing what so many people do. And he said, I'm coming back there when I get done. And I'm going to help people. Because this is what I've been pumping into him every day. You know, this is what you do. This is why these things happen. And it's not why they happen. It's what you can do with it. Why waste it? Why make it this life a waste? Why not let Jesus turn this mess of a life into a message? Why not do that? And boy, that stuck with him. He was just he got past all of his jitters and everything, and they were nice, and he wasn't as worried anymore. And so he called me on the road and talking to me about what he wanted to do and things. Well, there's such a ministry out there. Such a ministry. To know someone's language is to know where they're coming from. To know what position in life they are in so that you can begin to understand them. You'll never understand them until you know where they're coming from. You've got to know how to speak their language. But before we look at how to understand other people, let's look at how to understand our own messes. Okay, let's use Robert as an example. Yeah, he's an extreme example, but we have our own messes to deal with. Maybe things that we bring up, or maybe it's just stuff that happens in this world. It's a fallen world. Messes happen. We either get ourselves into them, or we just have it handed down to us by genetics or bad leadership or being hurt by someone or whatever. And I think then we'll be able to understand others a lot better if we can get that down. So how do I take my mess and turn it into a message of hope? First, we have to understand why God allows messes. That's the first question from most people, especially people like Robert. Why did God let me get hurt when I was 10 years old? He was 10 when he got molested by a 14-year-old. And then his adopted parents didn't believe him. So he carried that all that time. You know, I went and watched videos just to try to get in his head. I watched videos of people that were gay and then they became straight when they got saved, and I watched their video. Every one of them had the same story. Molested. And most of them said, I never even tied it to that. I just, as I grew up and the way the world talks to you and everything, you just think, oh, I guess I'm gay. Because I have these tendencies and these feelings that seem foreign to other people, but they seem right to me. Every one of them said the same thing. When I got saved, when I believed on Jesus, that was when I tied it to that moment in my life and was able to get past the feelings and the desires. They were able to go back and say, the guy that did that to me probably had something done to him. They were able to forgive that, see, and then they could move on from it. One after another. I watched these videos, the same MO every time. Whatever's happened, they're stealing their innocence, you see, and then Jesus gives it back. Jesus gives the innocence back. That's what it is. And they're able to see what's happening in their life. Man, pray for Robert. I told him those things. And however many others that we'll have. We had Leroy in here. Same issues growing up. Same problems when he was young. First, we have to understand why God allows messes. John chapter 9. Wait a minute, I said Genesis 50, didn't I? Genesis 50 and verse 20. That's the one I had on my mind. Genesis 50 and verse 20. And then we'll go to John chapter 9. In verse 20, this is Joseph talking to his brethren that sold him into slavery, that really didn't care if he lived or died, treated him very badly when he was younger, type thing. He says, "But as for you, ye thought evil against me, but God meant it unto good, to bring to pass, as it is this day, to save much people alive." This is the opportunity we have to take our messes and turn it into a message. Now, John chapter 9. John chapter 9 and verse 1 through 7, starting out. This is after the Feast of Tabernacles, and there's a lot of people in Jerusalem right now. They are performing ceremonies day after day, and there is people everywhere. And as Jesus passed by, he saw a man which was blind from his birth. And they're kind of on the outskirts right now. They've left the crowd of people because the blind and the halt, they're pushed out, kept outside of the city there. And Jesus has left the crowd, and he sees this blind man from his birth. And his disciples asked him, saying, "Master, who did sin, this man or his parents, that he was born blind?" Jesus answered, "Neither hath this man sinned, nor his parents, but that the works of God should be made manifest in him." We know there's sin in him and his parents. They're not perfect. Jesus is trying to point us to attitude all the time. He's trying to say to us, don't be focused on why somebody's in the shape that they're in. Don't look at it like that. Focus on their being in that shape is an opportunity to glorify God. Verse 4, "I must work the works of him that sent me while it is day. The night cometh when no man can work. As long as I am in the world, I am the light of the world." When he had thus spoken, he spat on the ground and made clay of the spittle. And he anointed the eyes of the blind man with the clay, and said unto him, "Go wash in the pool of Siloam," which is by interpretation sent. He went his way, therefore, and washed, and came seeing. Why would Jesus go through such a weird ritual for this guy to get his sight back. Remember the other times when he just says, open your eyes, and they could see. Why would he do that here? I can tell you exactly why. In this context, it helps me to understand why. And I was talking to Jordan Parker the other day, and he also helped me to understand this. Just things talking about addicts and what they go through and things and what it does for other people. The guy was probably healed as soon as Jesus touched him. He rubbed the clay in his eyes so that he'd have to walk up right in the middle of a bunch of people. The Pool of Siloam, that's where everybody's at the Feast of Tabernacles. That's where they end the feast. If you remember when we talked about it in John chapter 9, they've got that pitcher of living water that they carry up the hill and they dip in the Pool of Siloam and they pour it out on the ground. That's when Jesus says, I am that living water. You're missing it, guys. So that was in John chapter 8. See, we're in John chapter 9. He sends this blind guy, spits in the mud, rubs it all in his eyes, and tells him to go. I'll tell you what, you rub mud in my eyes, you're not going to have to tell me to go wash. But Jesus had to tell him where to go wash, Go wash in the Pool of Siloam. And the multitudes that are there for the Feast of Tabernacles sees this blind man get his sight. It's not on the outskirts of town. It's right in the middle of all these people. Why does God allow these things to happen? Because it glorifies Him. If you'll use it right. If you won't waste it. We can't waste these opportunities. Whatever it is, depression, oppression, sicknesses, use it to glorify God. Find somebody that has the same issues and help them with it. Look, he said to go wash. We're to wash in the water of the Word, right? This is how we get our blindness taken off, by washing in this. But the guy, you want to say something? Go ahead.
This is something that I struggle with all the time, because I think, okay, if I was able to work, if I was able to do the physical things that I did before, I would be able to do a whole lot more for God, for the Word, than not being able to do things. So that's where I struggle. Because then I think, well, okay, am I supposed to go out and do some things, and then knowing that it's going to be really hard, and maybe that's what I'm supposed to do. I'm supposed to go out and do stuff that's going to make me physically suffer. I don't know what I'm supposed to do. So that's the big question. I'm sure that's a big question for a lot of people. That if they didn't have the physical limitations that they have, they could do so much more. So why is it better to have a physical limitation than it is to
Because if you,
I can't guess what God thinks.
well,
Because there's going to be somebody else in your same situation that is worse off than you are, but you are uplifting to them. They're like, well, look at you. You can do it. Surely I can do it. And if you're giving God all the glory for it, then maybe that's where I need to be at in my life. Maybe I need to be better in my Bible and better at praying and better.
Maybe now it's the wisdom that you have that you need to share, and that would be your ministry, and not the physical things that you used to do before. Sometimes we have to realize that our limitations don't have to limit us in being able to do things for the Lord, because, like she said, you can pray, you can talk to people, you can share your story, you can encourage, you can message people, just kindness, you know what I mean? Or,
I have a very special friend that messages me every single day. How are you today? What can I do for you today?
that's like Carolyn, she does that for a lot of people here too. She has a very powerful ministry, I think, you know, but she's limited physically as well. But she cares for people and she lets them know that, and, you know, sometimes
If it, you can't be scared of hurting.
Is that enough? Because, well, I hate to talk about myself, but I do that quite a bit. I mean, that's all I have to give. So if I go to Walmart and the ladies at the clerk can hardly stand and she's in obvious pain, and you ask her, "Are you okay?" You know, and smile, and I guess that's enough. Is that what I'm supposed to be doing? Because I've always done that. But sometimes I think God slowed me down so I could be in the same level as Bill.
Maybe. Oh, it goes back to, I think, you know, when COVID hit and so many people were just scared to death. You know, I mean, I tried to have balance, you know, but Jesus said, "He that seeketh to save his life shall lose it." I mean, the people quit living their lives completely. No life. There was no life. And he said, "They that will lose their life for my sake, they shall find it." There's nothing more gratifying than getting wore out and hurting over helping somebody. You know, even if you're limping to get back in the house, boy, you pleased God. You know, we're so afraid of any little pain or any little suffering, and the Bible calls us to suffer. Suffer, 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 suffer. We've been put into this box in America. Just whatever you can do to stay alive another minute. Whatever you can do to stay alive. I mean, don't do that. It may not be good, you know. Don't go help that person because you're too weak. Jesus says just the opposite. When you're weak, He is strong, and His strength is made perfect. That's when people see God's strength. When we say, "I'm not going to worry about," and you don't go around saying, "Oh, I'm doing this for this person even though I'm really bad," you know, they'll know. People will know. And, I mean, the ministry is everywhere. Everywhere. I can't spend 1 hour up here without a ministry presenting itself. Sometimes I have to hide because I can't get no studying done. It's everywhere. And if we're afraid to have some pain here and there, we're going to miss the mark. We're going to miss out on what God can do with us.
Right, and maybe the person that God has put you responsible for, maybe they are at the doctor's office, or they're somewhere that you wouldn't be if you had to work.
and sacrifices themselves speak to people too, and speak ministry, because whether they acknowledge it at the time or not, they see when you make a sacrifice, or they know that could have been easy for her, but she's still out there doing it.
There's a balance to it. I mean, you don't just go jump off a cliff because you're no good till I'm dead.
Boy, there must really be nothing wrong with you because you're able to do this or you're able to do that. But they don't see you go home and cry because you're hurting so bad.
But God sees
They
it.
think you're lying.
God sees it, and they will see it. You just don't. That's what God says. If you'll do it, that He will lift you up, because that's what He wants people to see. They'll find out. The right people will find out. Pammy?
I think too, if you're doing ministry for the right reason, you're never going to feel like you're doing enough. You're never going to feel like, oh, I did everything I could. You're always going to feel like, I could have done more. I could have helped more people. I should have done this. I should have done that. So if you have that feeling, it's not a bad thing. It just means that you
Yeah, it just gives you the unction. Yeah. Mama?
People at dialysis, sometimes I think of them and I worry about them. And I know they see it in my face. And they know who I am. They know that I'm a Christian. I don't know what I'm trying to say, but if you ask God to use you, He will use you. You don't have to worry about it. Just let Him do.
Yeah,
Just be open to it.
that's it. Just don't be afraid.
It's like
Don't be
Roy,
afraid.
when he tells us about his dad going in the hospital, and he's sitting there and ministering to the nurses that are taking care of him, you know. He does it, and
Yeah.
his age, and, you know, different things that he's got going on, you see it happen, so.
Yeah. The more you get involved in your local church, the more opportunities you'll have. That's the way it's always been in my life. The more involved you get, the more He's able to use you. And more often than not, it's right here. You don't have to be going everywhere, because it all presents itself somehow, just you don't even know it, but everybody here, because he said only know this person and this person, this person. I think he said Rose and Danny and one other person's only name that he could remember. But he was clumping us all together. He wasn't just pulling those three out. So there's something going on here without you even knowing it. Just being here, being a part, and not making him feel like he's an outcast. I don't know how many of you know it or not, but just a couple months ago, he was a girl. Trying to be a girl. Taking the meds and everything, trying to change his identity. And when I found it out, I just said, I can give you all the money in the world and help you in every way, but it's not going to be help until you stop shaking your fist at God and embrace who He made you. Then we can work with something. And lo and behold, he's back, as much of a boy as he can be. He's messed himself up a little bit with the stuff they've made him take. But he desires to be right with God. Just being at the right place at the right time, a lot of times, is all it takes to be a blessing.
Every time I'm here, everybody's always so nice, and sometimes I feel inadequate as well, even though I do a lot of things here, so I understand that struggle, but everybody comes together and greets people differently, and like it takes all of it to make people feel comfortable somewhere. God sees it all.
Very true. John stood there and spoke to him for quite a while there Sunday. I think that really did him a lot of good. Just any little word of encouragement. You know what bothers him more than anything is if nobody says nothing. Scared him.
He was probably a big John goes, he was washing. Any mind. When I was going out, I was telling everybody I loved them, and I looked at him and I said, I love you.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know if he believed it or not.
I think he did. When he called me on the phone, I was back this way about an hour. And when he got off the phone, he said, I love you, man. Something happened here. I mean, something's going on. We've had some rough things in all that, but that's the way it goes. That's your trial period. If you're not really into it, it won't last. If you'll stick with it, God will give you fruit. He'll give you fruit. So, and I know things could still go haywire with him, but it's looking.
You've got to always acknowledge the fact that the devil's going to work against you and try to put that
Emotions. He works in our emotions.
good and try to get you
It's too hard.
deter that so that you don't help that next person or you don't,
Mm-hmm.
see that next person because he may not be able to get your soul. I tell people that a lot, that there's a lot of people that you touch that are not saved yet, and you plant seeds and you do all this, and the devil's going to do anything he can to make you feel inadequate, so that you aren't planting seeds in the next person, or helping that next soul get saved.
Yeah. Don't ever give up. Keep planting those seeds. For sure. Well, you all preached my message. I didn't have to bumble through it. Appreciate that very much. Let's pray. Lord, thank you for this. Help us to go out and live this for you. We made a decision to try to heal our community in the different problems that it has. Lord, we got a long ways to go, but our desire is to do it. Help us with the resources, and Lord, to help us to pray for laborers for the harvest. In Jesus' name, amen. All right.